Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strife's Sanctum. My name is Citizen Strife, and this week we continue our journey into the world with .hack, infection, mutation, outbreak, and quarantine, otherwise known as the .hack quadrilogy. Now, last week I kind of played it dumb and tried to stay spoiler-free and didn't. Only for one thing in .hack sign, but this won't be a spoiler-free review because I made that mistake. So, and besides, stuff that happens in .hack sign informs what happens here, so the initial part of the thing has to be spoilers, and I might as well just spoil everything while I'm at it. Being a rare game and all, it's still something I don't know how many people have seen or played, but assume from here on out that because I'm going to spoil a thing, I'm just going to spoil a thing. It is what it is. But as far as .hack infection goes, I caught it out of nowhere because I didn't even know they were making a game of this franchise. I'd watched .hack sign and was like, wow, this is a cool thing. And I had the original 4 discs, much like the original GU discs. I don't anymore. And they ended up selling for a pretty penny when I was going into grad school and needed money. So let that be a lesson. They are very rare. And because GU was re-released on PS4, but these weren't, these are definitely the rarest of the games. If you end up having all 4, you can make a good amount of money. They cost about $200 way back when. I'm sure you can get, double that now at a game store and whatnot. But they're still decent games. I wouldn't really call them amazing. This was the first attempt of CyberConnect 2 to make a game out of it, and it wasn't until GU where they actually hit their stride. But I will kind of go over what is involved in this entire package and do my best to at least give the good points of what .hack, infection, mutation, outbreak, and quarantine were doing, what the quadrilogy did, and then how that leads into everything later. But we can't really talk about the beginning of the game without talking about what happens at the end of .hack sign. So, Tsukasa, Subaru, and the rest end up confronting Morgana. And Sora decides, hey, I'm going to be Sora-like and do my own thing and let them escape. And Morgana's like, no, I'm not going to let you do that. I've already lost my reason for existence because Aura has woken up. And if you're going to be so stupid as to catch me off guard, well, you're some scrub and I'm an AI that has control of the world, so we'll see how you like it. She basically Thanos snaps and says, well, if I'm not going to be the AI of the world anymore, the least I can do is chase the current AI of the world and have my revenge. So Morgana decides to forego being Morgana and instead becomes what's known as the Cursed Wave. So Sora has been basically data drained, not turned into Skaith, which is the first boss of the game, but is held captive, essentially, in a comatose state. So that's the ending of .hack sign proper. Of course, there's going to be a spoiler tag in this video, but I couldn't have gone into this without talking about that ending because, let's face it, there's no way to get around it because it informs the beginning of the game. So, as has been the case for the last few videos, I'm going to go plot and then into characters first. This one won't be nearly as intensive as Persona 3 or Persona 5, so bear that in mind. But we start the game proper with a new character, Kite, voiced by Mona Marshall. And Mona was in stuff like Wolf's Rain and such around this time frame, but this is kind of her main role as Kite, this well-assuming, yet unassuming but brave kid who wanders into the world because his friend Orca, played by Kirk Thornton, who was Jin in Samurai Champloo and tons and tons and tons of other shit. You'll hear Kirk Thornton's name every review, I'm sure. And if not, it'll probably happen every other review. But suffice it to say, he's been in more anime and games than practically anybody. So you'll hear it eventually. But anyway, Orca is playing a character much like Bear did, this William Wallace-looking guy with paint all over his body and shit as a Blade Master. But anyway, gets invited. They know each other. They're friends offline. And Orca's like, hey, just enjoy the world. Unbeknownst to Kite, he's been investigating stuff in .xine in the background with Balmung. And Balmung is a character we'll get to later. But so he takes him to a tutorial mission. We do the thing in the tutorial mission. Skaith and Aura, in this game voiced by Leah Sargent, who was Shion in Xenosaga and Millie from Trigun. So Aura is a character in this, and we'll go over Aura in a minute. She's getting chased by Skaith, and Aura ends up getting data drained later. Orca ends up getting involved too, and Skaith, being Morgana, can't be really defeated by normal means, ends up getting fucked over and ends up being comatose as well. So therein lies the issue at play. Orca brought Kite into this game, and now he's comatose, and Kite has to basically take Aura's power for himself and survive long enough to see the world restored. So the actions of .xine inform this quadrilogy, and now it's Kite's job to take over for the other cast members who are still doing their own thing but off screen at this point. So this cast has its own dealings and its own cast. So I talked about a few of them already, but I'll go into Aura a little bit more specifically because Aura was seen in .xine as this AI of the world. Morgana doesn't like that and is chasing her around and is saying, no, I'm going to destroy you and get rid of you. So Aura breaks into pieces, and Aura's whole manifestation of the plot is kind of this background player, but also super important. So whenever she shows up, it's important to tell you, hey, there's a boss coming. There's the cursed wave is after me. You need to save my life. And Kite is not only trying to save his friends, but trying to save everybody who ends up becoming comatose, because it's not just Skaith going around causing comatose people. It's these things known as data bugs. So Kite has been given Aura's power, which is to data drain himself. So it's a weird mechanic in game, and I'll go over the data drain idea, but he basically takes the same skills that Skaith does and uses it against other impossible to kill enemies. And the impossible to kill enemies have been causing comatose people around. If he uses it on people, well, he will cause them to be comatose. He doesn't use it on people usually. He uses it on data bugs or the cursed wave. He is the only person that can save this. So it gets him in a bit of a pickle because everybody seems to recognize how important Kite now is as this character. So he's now got the attention of not only system administrators, but he has the attention of hackers. So the other main players, there's like 20 characters or so, but a lot of them are kind of just there. But Kite is important. Aura is important. Orca. The main other supporting character is Black Rose, played by Wendy Lee. She's basically Mimiru in this game. So, short temper, wants to kick somebody's ass, but she has a reason. She found out that her brother was in a coma. So she joins Kite and hoping that if helping Kite survive, she can bring her brother back. They also get the attention of Balmung of the Azure Sky. And Balmung was voiced by two people, oddly enough. He was originally voiced by Doug Erholtz, who was Squall/Leon in Kingdom Hearts. But then, like, a game later, he gets replaced by Crispin Freeman. And the weirdest thing I remember was Freeman is the main character that he's voiced by all this time. But, like, a lot of Erholtz's lines are still there in battle. So in battle, you'll hear Erholtz's lines. But later on in the game, it's Crispin Freeman doing all the voice acting in cutscene. It's just this weird, like, they couldn't decide who they wanted as the actor, so they decided, okay, we'll have both, and then maybe it was some scheduling issue or something. That shit does happen, But I always thought it was strange. But Balmung is tied to the system administrators, and he's at a crossroads because his friend and his partner Orca was in a coma, but he doesn't trust the skill of Kite because it's against the system and whatever. So he's very like a hardliner. And Black Rose gets pissed at him all the time because he's such a kind of a dick about it. But he is a very powerful ally too. So, Black Rose has like heavy weapons. Balmung's more of a straightforward sword and not sword and shield, but more of a straightforward, because there's like one-handed swords and two-handed swords. Mechanically, Black Rose is stronger, but Balmung is faster, so take your pick. Like I said, Kite has the attention of Helba, the hacker extraordinaire, voiced by Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. We talked about hackers before. We talked about Mary Elizabeth McGlynn before as the Major in Ghost in the Shell, but she was in .hack Sign a little bit near the end. She's a lot in this game as this level 99 hacker, because of course she made herself level 99. She's this imposing figure, this mysterious lady who is able to just like create a separate server for herself, because she's a hacker. She can do that shit. And she gets the ire of Leos, who's the main system admin. Bob Pappenbrook, who did... oh god, it was like 20 episodes ago we reviewed Heat Guy J. He was the main character of that show. But Leos is this pig head that Helba's always needling and being a dick to, but Leos has Balmung's attention because he's just a normal player. So there's this like back and forth throughout the entire game of Helba thinking one thing, Leos thinking another. Leos trying to get rid of Kite, but he can't do it because Kite's bracelet has like plot armor basically, and Kite is just caught in the middle. It's like, I'm just here to save my friend. I'm just here to make sure that the world is a good place to play, instead of this like decrepit just mess of a world that it causes people to come comatose. So you have that. A couple games into it, you also get a character known as Wiseman, voiced by Steve Bloom. He's a wave master himself, and he's kind of an information broker. And he kind of works in with Helba, sort of, kind of, because he has all the info on what is known as the Epitaph of Twilight, which was the basis of the story for .hack Sign, the world, this game itself, and this whole cursed wave, which are the enemies and bosses of this game, Skaith being the main one of them. But essentially, Morgana from the .hack Sign show turned into these 8 bosses that, once defeated, hopefully cause the world back to order. The problem is that every time Kite and Black Rose and whomever they choose, whether it be Wiseman or other people, usually it's Mistral, who's this like stay-at-home mom, who's this really like bouncy lady, mousy lady, because you need a healer in your party, duh. But every time they beat something, whether it's Skaith or one of the other 7, shit goes south and shit goes wrong. And a lot of the other stuff that happens is a cause and effect because Kite keeps fucking around with the system. And it becomes an interesting story of how does Kite and essentially Black Rose, how do they coincide their feelings of messing up the world even further to do what is right? Because on Helba's side, she knows that she thinks that this is what's the proper way. Leos is getting pissed and saying, no, you should just resign yourself to shutting off the server or, deleting your character because you're fucking up the system worse. So that's the cool interplay of the plot. So it's a decent plot, but it is kind of let down in ways by the way the game is presented, and I'll go over that in a minute. I do have to mention .hack Liminality before I finish the plot, though. .hack Liminality, in each of the discs, you get 4 basically episodes. They look like .hack Sign, more dramatic retellings. The idea of liminality is to you have a character voiced by Jameson Price, like a reporter or some guy. He meets all these different girls in these different episodes, and what you're seeing in these is kind of the outside world effect of what Morgana and the Cursed Wave are doing inside the game. So while the game is going on, while those events are going on, while Dot Hexine has essentially completed, by the way, you get to see firsthand that cars aren't working, hospitals aren't working, train stations are fucking up, internet's fucking up, all the shit. And you actually get to see Helba as a character. I think it was like in the second disc. She shows up as like 4 or 5 minutes, but it's McGlynn voicing her, so you get this idea that it's Helba's main character outside the game. In this like subtle like nods, they have nods to all the stuff going on in game, but it's a nice companion piece. They're only like 20 minutes long, so you get these like little interstitial bits that kind of add to the flavor, because the one thing that Sign did not do was show a lot of the overworld stuff, the outworld stuff, the real life, and this was a way to kind of show that off. And as much as I like how Sign portrayed the real life as a thing that happens just to inform the narrative, it was nice that they added these 4 episodes in to show you the real world effects of what's going on while Kite is trying to save the world, and it keeps getting fucked up. But that's the plot. Kite needs to save the world. He has a power that goes against system parameters, but he knows that despite all the shit going south, he has to save it. And unfortunately for him, it causes tragedy along the way. There's a lot of different characters that go on too, some of them more important, some less important, but you do meet a good array of party members, because you have to remember this is an MMO, or a facsimile, a simulation of an MMO. It's a single player game, but they do a great job of giving you characters to play as in other stuff if you don't want to play as Black Rose all the time. If you don't want, you have to play as Kite, admittedly, every single show or every single quest, but you can choose, hey, I want to use Wiseman instead of Mistral, or I want to use a spear wielder instead of a swordsman, or a heavy blade, or whatever. You can change it around a little bit, and it gives you a little bit of versatility, because unfortunately you're going to be dealing with a lot of fighting, and that's where I think the game starts to struggle, is fights and dungeons. And this is also true for Recode, or GU. So this is a problem endemic of the game style. But as far as the game, they give you keywords and areas, and you go to an area, and you go into a dungeon, and you find a treasure, or you find a data bug, or you fight a boss. It doesn't change, unfortunately. You go through one dungeon, you've been through them all. And it is a grind. It is a dungeon crawl game. And it's annoying, because you can tell they had an idea, but the mechanics and the graphics and the visuals do not really gel very well. So even though you're invested in the story, you're always like, oh, hey, go to this place. And then you go back to your desktop and you do another thing and you fight another dude. And the fighting is hack and slash. So you hack and slash, and you use some skills, and you use your SP, and the skills look really cool. You get new weapons and new elemental weapons, so it's cool. You can even get Sora's weapons, which have a cool like 90% HP kill rate, and they hit really fucking well, or something like that. So you get cool stuff, but you can't escape the feeling that once you've seen a dungeon, you've seen the dungeon. Once you've seen one area, you've seen that area, and you keep coming back through different areas that all look the same. That procedurally generated bleh that infects, those early Persona dungeons, that sort of vibe is true in this. And it really frustrates me, because the narrative is so strong. You're just like, I'm pulled into the game, but the gameplay is really, really sucking wind right now. And it really does suck. The benefit is it does have something known as data drain. So these data bugs are, sort of bosses, but they're actually just, harder characters to fight. But you need to do what's known as data draining them, and that basically rewrites their data to take their invincibility away. You get items for doing that, but you also run the risk of having a game over. It's an interesting mechanic where the more Kite uses data drain, the more he gets infected, and if you get to 100% infection, the game just auto dies. It doesn't manifest until way late in the game, where dungeons are forced upon you where you have a lot of data bugs in them, or you have a shit ton of fights with that near the end. So it's never really that much an issue, but it is something you have to be aware of, and that is kind of its main mechanic. The fact that you can change a lot of different characters in your party to be the 3 that you want to use, so you don't have to use the same 3 or 4 if you don't want to, but data draining characters and whatnot. I mentioned before that there are boss fights in this game, and they come in 2 different forms. They come in Cursed Wave, which, say for instance, Skaith, you get this weird, like, glitchy ass background and crazy ass weird music that is all fucking, like, disturbing organs and pianos and just fucked up weird shit. You know, like fucked up EDM on drugs kind of thing. And those fights hurt. They have special skills that only they know. They do a shit ton of damage that only they can do. And fucking hell, they are long. It is a war of attrition. But each fight at least has, okay, we have to use magic on this thing, or we have to use fights, you know, if we would use whatever, or we can only attack it at certain points. Some of them have different skills. So there's 8 different fights. And each one, while they still have the same mechanics as a normal battle, at least feel different enough and important enough that you're like, okay, because this thing's here, I have to be on board. And I've seen people basically turn Kite into a healer and then let Black Rose and others do all the damage for them rather than heal, using just healer. Because it is a war of attrition. You take all your items and all your stuff and you chuck them at this thing, waiting for that moment 5 or 10 minutes later to data drain the fuck out of it and then kill it. Because there's a second phase of the fight where they go faster, but they also lose a lot of their unique abilities, and you still have to kill them as legit bosses. So those are kind of the draw of the battle system. It's just getting to there that is problematic. There's also a secondary boss known as Kubia, who is described as the dark side of Kite's bracelet. And destroying it means you end up destroying the bracelet as well, which kind of sounds like a bad idea. Because if Kite can't use data, how the fuck are you supposed to beat the wave? But Kubia shows up to give you these staged boss fights. They're not nearly as difficult as the Cursed Wave, but they at least, they at least give you another form of boss fight. Again, a lot of this stuff is very kind of basic, and it's unfortunate because the narrative that was built in .hexine and liminality is pretty damn strong. And it isn't really until GU that at least some of the gameplay gets centralized and performs better as a game concept. Outside of battles and dungeons, you have root towns, and these are the fun parts. You go around and you see these people wandering around, and you can trade for items, you can talk to them, you get all these like special items for doing trades or talking to people or raising affection with your party members. You can go into a forum and ask for advice or new areas about where to level up or get new items and shit like that. You can also go to your desktop to learn more lore for the story, to give new keywords, to get to new dungeons, but you can also like raise affection. So if you wanted to talk to Black Rose about random shit, if you raise her affection level enough, you can kind of talk to her or talk to a different character and raise their affection. And it's sort of like a social link mechanic. It's a bare bones effect, but it has, you get to learn stuff about the characters. And I think those are kind of the important, cool things that make this feel like a game as opposed to the game part of the fucking game, to steal a phrase. It's unfortunate because the battle system lets it down. The graphics in the game let it down because the aura of being in essentially a fake MMO that is on the fritz is actually a cool idea, but it's brought down by the battles and the music. Outside of the Root Town themes, like Makanu, if you need to hear any song in the game, I'd say the Makanu Root Town theme is pretty cool. Because Makanu returns. Makanu is the main root town from .hack Sign and .hack Roots, and it's always going to be like the first place you always go. So Makanu at least always feels like .hack. If you didn't have Makanu, it wouldn't feel like a .hack game as a first town. But there's like 4 or 5 others, and they have their distinct themes, and they all sound different enough. The cursed wave fights are all interesting too, and they have the same kind of weird EDM on drugs vibe to them. But again, the music doesn't have that same feel because Yuki Kajiro wasn't the composer for this one. So again, the music's not much to write home about. You're kind of here for the story and characters. And again, that's really the problem, is the graphics kind of suck. They're PS2 graphics for sure, and the in-game cutscenes are really well done for like 2002, 2003, 2004, for a limited budget title, sure. But the dungeon layouts are boring. You always have to go to the bottom of a dungeon, and it's always the same 4 or 5 fucking dungeons over and over and over. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking for somebody, you're doing a quest for somebody, you're fighting a boss. It is always the same goddamn thing over and over. So the gameplay loop really lets the game down. And this is something that I think .hack GU at least breaks out of a little bit more. So it's really frustrating that the gameplay of the game is really where it falls flat. Is the repetition. The repetition of this game is so sad. For a game that is spouted as like 40 to 60 hours, you're doing the same shit over and over, and it's not even the good type. That being said, I mean, you can break the monotony by going on a quest with a different character and a different class, so you can see what a different skill set they have. The story and the characters are done well. It has that tone of .hack Sign in it, just in a video game. Like, Kite is an endearing person. Black Rose is justifiably, not a mean girl, but like short-tempered, but she has that like go get an attitude that is infectious. Like, the other characters all mean something in the plot, even though the game lets it down. Like, a lot of these characters are at least somewhat interesting and intriguing, and you want to see them succeed. You want to see Kite get his friends back. You want to see Helba kind of fuck around with Leo some more because she's such a unique, mysterious character. You want to see if Balmung kind of gets his shit together and starts working with the party. The characters themselves are good. The root towns are all well made, and it gets this feel of like a weird MMO without being an MMO, but it's still like a hack and slash RPG. So if you wanted like a single player experience but you didn't want to do the MMO part of a game, this is kind of like a cool, like, this isn't me playing WoW, this isn't me playing EverQuest, this is me playing an RPG based around being an EverQuest or something. It's a cool idea with a dramatic story, and that's really what it is. I think as a first attempt, I mean, it's a decent enough attempt, but everything that works against it is going to be the main stuff that you want to do. I don't think this game's all that great, looking back on it. I think if you're going to experience this, you want to experience it for the story, the voice acting, and the characters that are involved, because you get to see the end of .hack Sign and this version of the world, and that in itself is a good draw. The draw is .hack liminality, seeing the outside effects of what's going on in game to inform the narrative, and the little cameos of the .hack Sign characters here and there. You get to see those every once in a while, so it's kind of a welcome back kind of thing. So everything works narratively to kind of inspire you to kind of live through this kind of shitty gameplay. But again, we live in kind of a YouTube age where you don't have to play the game to experience it anymore, or I don't know if anybody can even stream this anymore because it's a very rare title and a very rare experience. But if you're on the fence, or if you're not sure, if you've never heard of this before, take it from somebody who's played it a couple of times. You don't really need to play this game. You need to experience this game, and YouTube gives you a way to do it. The story is going to be the draw. That being said, CyberConnect 2 does a better job in .hack GU, which is why GU, when we get to that, is going to be the better of the experiences, and honestly is probably the best of all of these experiences. But that will do it for .hack Quadrilogy. As much as I enjoy the game, it still has its flaws, and they are very big flaws. But it still adds a second piece to this .hack puzzle. Next week, we're going to do .hack Roots, which I just finished, and I enjoyed it, but I still have some issues. But again, it's a prequel to .hack GU. And if anything is going to interest me in anything I can recommend as far as .hack stuff, it would be .hack Sign and especially .hack GU. So we'll do Roots next week, and then we will do .hack GU the following week. After that, I believe it's Toradora and Metal Gear Solid. That's what I have tentatively signed up for next week and the weeks beyond. But again, I am enjoying, despite my misgivings about some of the product here and there. .hack is still a franchise that I don't think gets as much credit as it deserves, unless you're a fan of it. So again, I'm hopeful that people understand that I am a fan, and I want other people to at least experience this from a perspective of this has its place. It's got some issues, but it still has its place as a property that I still am fond of. And I hope by the end of this 4-week journey that people can understand why I like .hack so much. But we'll save that for next week, and I'll see you guys later. Citizen Strife, signing off.